Hi there. In a world where nothing is certain, that means anything is possible, right? If you want to fulfill your dreams and desires, you are in the right place. You absolutely can have a life of happiness. Everyone deserves an abundance of love, laughter, success, health, and wealth. I'm Tara Chadzakis, and you're listening to the Happy, Inspired, Motivated podcast. The show that brings you meditation, mindset, and motivation. So start by giving yourself permission to be awesome. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hi there, and welcome to this week's episode of Happy, Inspired, Motivated. Now, today I'm going to be joined by a lady called Joanna Hunter, and Joanna is based in the UK, the same as me, up in Scotland actually, but she's the opposite end of the country to me. Joanna is an award-winning spiritual life and business coach, as well as an author as well. Joanna has built 5 six-figure businesses during her career, and she currently works as a spiritual life and business coach. Joanna is also the founder of the world's largest mindset and intuition experiment called the My $1 Million Experiment, which recently enrolled over 4,000 participants. So hi, Joanna, and welcome to Happy, Inspired, Motivated. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm really excited to be on the show.
Good. I'm excited to have you. You're up in Scotland, that's right, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm in the north of Scotland.
Is it cold up there?
No, it's bright and sunny today. It's really gorgeous. We have literally no snow today.
Fantastic. So, Joanna, you have multiple six-figure businesses. So you've built multiple six-figure businesses. So tell us a little bit about where you started way back in the day when you first started your entrepreneurial journey.
So I started at the age of 23 and opened my first brick and mortar shop at the age of 23. My investment for that shop was £3,500. UK pounds, so about $4,500 in American money, and for that I bought my rent, I paid for my signage, I did up my shop, I bought the first stock for my shop, all the things.
Wow.
And within a year, I built my first six-figure business. And then between the ages of 23 and 26, I built 4 separate six-figure businesses. So I built my shops, ended up on 3 locations and an online location. Then I had a 50% partnership in a shoe shop. And then I had a 65-seater licensed cafe and bistro. And then, as if that wasn't all challenging enough, I then had a spiritual events pop-up company on top of all of that.
Wow.
So I worked in them for the cafe we had for 2 years, and then we turned the premises were really large, and we actually expanded our shop into those premises instead. So we kept the premises, but we got rid of the cafe. It was a lot of work, and we learned a lot with the cafe, but it wasn't really, I think our heart wasn't really in that business.
Yeah.
And then we expanded our shops and things. So then I worked in all of that for nearly a decade, and then I hit a very large burnout.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about that. Was that it was organ failure, I believe, wasn't it?
Yes. So I was at home, and it was a rare occasion because I was usually at work. I just finished my cereal in the morning, and I was taking my bowl through to the kitchen, and suddenly I just saw the floor coming up to meet me, and I thought that's odd. That was my thought of it.
Yeah.
The next memory that I have from that morning was paramedics, and I was sort of I was sitting on the floor leaning against the couch, and paramedics putting a mask on my face. Then I have another memory from the ambulance stopping and them like working on me in a lay-by. And then the
Wow.
next thing I remember is waking up in a hospital bed. I didn't even remember getting into the ER. In the emergency room at all. I have no memory of the emergency room at all. I just remember being brought into a ward and waking up on a ward
That's
and
scary.
and not really knowing where I was or what was
Mm.
going on and things like that. After extensive 2 days of really, really extensive testing, what they discovered was that every soft tissue organ in my body was failing.
Wow, my goodness.
And I was told to write my letters to my small children, and
Oh,
I was told to prepare my family for my passing.
that's giving me shivers just
Um,
hearing that. Oh my goodness.
so there was no viral or bacterial reason why my body was doing this. So it wasn't like I was like sick, but I was
Mm.
dying. And on day 3 of being in the hospital, I had a total, like, a major, like, angels singing epiphany. And the epiphany was this was the first 3 days off I'd had in 7 years, and that
Wow.
my body had literally done for me what I hadn't been willing to do for myself in 7
Yeah.
years, which was to give myself time off. And I it was really startling, and it was really hard to see myself with such crystal clear clarity and be like, wow, okay. And I knew that if I was to get out of this, then I was going to have to change something radical. It wasn't enough to just do a little change. If
Yeah.
I was going to survive, if I was going to get out of this, there had to be a radical, fundamental shift and change in my life and my body in all of the areas of my life. So, I the doctors had said to write my letters to my kids, and the doctors had said I would never leave the hospital. So I did a very, very cocky thing, which was I needed the doctor to be wrong. And the only way that I knew that I could make the doctor wrong was if I walked out of that hospital. So I signed myself out about a
Oh
week
my
and a half
goodness.
into
That is
basically
really
laying there
ballsy.
with multiple organ failure. And and I signed myself out. And they were like, the nurse was practically crying and begging me to stay. She was like, "We can't give you oxygen. We're doing so much for you right now. Like we can't give you anything to take home." And I was like, "No, it's fine, it's fine." And I was kind of very cocky about it, but I needed away from the people that were saying to me that I was dying. I needed to be
Mm.
in my own mind. I needed to be in my own head to say, like, no, we
Yeah.
are surviving this. And I made a decision that I was going to survive this. And I mean, like, for the first few days, I had the couch in our sitting room moved right up against our patio windows, and the patio doors cracked open so that there would be like a blast of air so that I could get like extra oxygen because I was struggling to breathe because my lungs had been
Amazing.
failing as well. So I was getting extra oxygen in the hospital, and of course now I was home. They were said like we can't send anything with you. So the first
Yeah.
few days of being home were rough because I was really struggling to breathe. I was struggling to do things. I could only really process liquids, and I don't think there was really anything happening with the liquids. They were just literally hydrating me and going through the body, but my
Mm.
digestive system had slowed down and everything. So, and but in that first days, I took my journal out, and when I had the energy, I started journaling and just making a list of what I now needed to do for myself. And I went on a journey that was to completely change and revolutionize my life. I call the journey the Get Selfish journey. It was a journey through the self. I had to go through myself. I had to look at
Mhm.
all of my errant thinking. I had to look at all of my faulty thinking that had literally landed me in hospital. I had to really go through all the layers of who I was and what was the standard that I had set for myself, which had been incredibly low.
Yeah.
It was work as hard as you possibly can.
Until your organs
Yeah,
fail.
till my organs failed, basically. And so one of the biggest things from that journey
Yeah.
was the relearning of listening to myself. And it awoke something inside me that had always been a huge part of me. I've always been really spiritual. I've always had an awareness of
Mhm.
spirit and had an awareness of energy. But this journey just awoke it to a much higher and deeper level. The more I began to listen to myself, the more my intuition started really, really speaking to me really loudly. And then shortly after that, I felt like I was being stalked by the law of attraction. Everywhere I went, people were trying to tell me about this thing, and I didn't want to know about it. I was like, nope, this is change your thoughts, change your life. Listen, lady, I have big problems. I need like better solutions than that. So but eventually what convinced me was seeing the book The Secret on the bestseller shelf in my local supermarket for 10 weeks straight.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, if this is in Tesco's for 10 weeks straight, like why? Like it must be something in it. It must have been selling really well every single week, in order to maintain that number one spot. So I was like, there must be something really
Yeah.
in this. So I began reading it and I was horrified and totally disgusted. And I was really angry at the author. I am a prolific reader. I love reading. I love learning. It's the first time in my life I've ever thrown a book in the wall. I literally chucked the book. I was so angry at that book. And I thought, if I was any worse off, this book would be the straw that broke the camel's back. I had now decided this was a dangerous book, and that, yeah, it was a dangerous book and it could kill someone, and somebody could take their own life if they were in just slightly worse off than I was. That would be the straw that broke the camel's back. So I didn't want to be the stupid cow. This is how I spoke to myself back then. That only had read a third of a book and then wrote a letter of complaint. No, I was going to read that whole damn thing, and then I was going to give it to her with both barrels. So I read the whole book, and I got to the end of the book, and the tears were just streaming down my face, and I realized this is what I had been searching for all my life. And a deep remembrance took place.
Good old Rhonda.
Yeah. I just felt like a deep remembrance took place, and I remembered, and I realized, even though the beginning of the book kind of says it's your fault because you've been attracting it all in, it then also explains that you were, attracting in your life on default. So after that, I had gone through another,
It's quite a hard thing to hear that though, isn't it?
Mhm.
It's hard for people to accept that they've attracted or manifested where
Yes.
they are, because if you're doing it on default, you don't
No,
think
you
about
well,
it, do
the thing
you?
is you don't have the knowledge, so therefore you're attracting in through your conditioning as opposed to conscious thought. Conscious thought is when you're awake to your thoughts and you're awake to it. So then I was literally any law of attraction teacher that would have me in their class, I was there front of the class, and I learned and I studied with literally hundreds of teachers. I watched nearly everything that YouTube had back then. I read hundreds of books on it. I literally studied this thing. I mean, I was obsessed with it, and it completely changed my life. And by 2006, I was teaching the law of attraction, and I was teaching it in Borders bookshops. So I had been to because of my multiple organ failure, I had been going to an Ayurvedic doctor who did acupuncture. So I've been having regular acupuncture too. He actually said on his first session with me, he said, "How are you still alive?" Like he says, "You have literally no chi in your body whatsoever right now." It was like, I don't know. I think I'm
Oh
running
my
on fumes right
goodness.
now. And so he was using acupuncture to reactivate my chi and reactivate the life force energy in my body. And so one day, a few months into learning and studying the law of attraction, but a few months into going and seeing him, I was all excited one day telling him about this thing and the law of attraction. It was amazing. And he said to me, he says, Joanna, he said, if you really, really want to learn something, you teach it. And that was all the permission I needed. And I literally skipped out of my acupuncture session when it was done, got my husband to drive me to the nearest Borders bookshops, and asked the manager if I could do talks in his bookshop for free. And that's what I did. And The talks were amazing. The first talk had 25 people. That was 25 people who didn't know who I was, 25 people who had just seen a random poster in a Borders bookshop.
Cool.
And the talk lasted 2 hours. It was supposed to last an hour, and it lasted 2 hours. We did an hour, and then we opened an hour to start with, and then we did opened up Q&A, and I thought maybe there would be 1 or 2 questions, but I think everybody in the audience had a question, and we just kept going until all the questions were answered. But a really weird thing happened to me as I began answering the questions. There was a couple of questions I didn't know the answer to, and as I was thinking, God, that's a good question. Like, I wonder what the answer is. The answer started coming out of my mouth. And I thought, oh my
Where did
goodness.
this come from?
Like, so the next time I asked my brother and my mum if they would want to come with me and could they record the session, because what was coming out of my mouth was like gold. And this time 75 people turned up to the next one,
Mm,
and I began speaking again and came to the Q&A section again. And even this time when I was speaking, there was moments where I just felt like there was another energy overtaking me and really speaking through me. And then this time again, it was about 3 people that asked questions. And I thought, I don't know the answer to that. And there was the answer. And people were so moved, and they were crying and asking me if they could hug me afterwards. And it was
wow.
just a really moving, powerful experience. And then I started to realize that there was like another energy being channeled through me.
Mm,
And it's taken me many, many years. I've worked with this energy now for many years, but it's taken me many years to kind of really own that I channel a collective
mm.
consciousness. And my clients love this collective consciousness now, and will say things like, "What do you think, Joanna and Skylar?" So my collective consciousness is called Skylar the channel, but they just bring through this sublime wisdom,
Mm,
and it takes you to this place of remembrance inside you where you remember and you're like, oh, of course it's like that, but it's like
yeah.
you didn't really have the knowledge. But then when the knowledge comes out of my mouth and you hear it, there's like something inside your body that switches on and it says, oh, of course it has, of course it was like that. And so it's so beautiful. I mean, these beings that I channel, they are collective consciousness. They're a bit like Abraham Hicks. Esther
I was
Hicks
just gonna
channels
say, actually, it
Abraham,
sounds like
who
Abraham,
worked.
but you're a Scottish version.
Yes, it's like literally like yeah, Skylar is just literally who I channel, and it's a collective consciousness, and they bring through these just literally like the inner workings of life and how energy works and how life works
Mm.
and how the law of attraction kind of activates and moves within that and things. So um the healing that they bring through is amazing. It's absolutely incredible. And all of my teachings that I do now in my global business, which is a multiple 6-figure business, where probably in the year that we're going to make 7 figures in this business,
Awesome.
where now all of my teachings are based on the teachings of Skylar. So they teach through me something that they call unity consciousness. So unity consciousness is spelt with like the word you in the front.
Mhm.
So it's unity, and it's you as a unified being of source energy while in human form. And it's incredibly powerful. My clients have very, very powerful shifts in their consciousness. They let go of an archetype that Skylar teaches about called poor little me. So everybody has the poor little me archetype. It's literally the thing that is ruining our lives.
Okay.
So we go through life, and it's any story that we're telling where we're telling a lesser story of ourselves. So it's the story always starts poor little me, and then you fill in your favorite flavor. So it's like poor little me. My favorite flavor, poor little me, was always to say, poor little me, it's all on me. I have to do it all myself.
Mm.
While I was telling that story, because I am a sovereign creator, a creator being in a body, I was also creating that very, very sarcastic reality of where it would all be on me, because that was what I was
Yeah.
speaking into being for myself. And so recognizing my Pearl Me story, recognizing that it was connecting me into the shadow, into the shadow web, and then recognizing that I could control that story and change it, which would fundamentally control and change my reality. And so,
Yeah.
this is a big part of what we teach now. And I'm also the founder of the world's largest metaphysical experiment. So, this is happening right now. We have a metaphysical experiment called my $1,000,000 experiment, and we're asking a really
Yeah.
juicy metaphysical question, which is, can mindset and intuition training, along with $1,000,000 plan, make you a millionaire in just 1 year? And so, some of the conversation that's happening inside that community, there's over 4,000 people that have joined us, is really incredible. It's so inspiring. And I'm starting to see some of my students really get this concept of like, oh, it's my story that's controlling this reality around me. And
Mhm.
when I'm telling this poor little me story, I'm literally having to live the poor little me reality, which is a very small, very closed in reality. People are often
Yeah.
inside the poor little me reality. People are often out to get us. We feel like the world's quite a mean place in that. And that's how I had lived for years.
Yeah.
So deep. I mean, like,
Mm.
even though I built these 4 6 figure businesses and then worked in them, I was constantly in poor little me. It was always, my story ran on a loop, all the time. Like,
Mm.
I have to do it all. It's all on me. It's all pressure. And of course, as long as I was telling that story, I was also creating the reality of it.
Yeah.
So to say that my life looks different now through the teachings of Skylar is an absolute understatement. It's like night and day. They're so different. I have so much ease, joy, and flow in my life. I have
Mm.
things feel effortless compared to I always felt before in my earlier businesses. It was like pushing the boulder up the hill. Um, and I just have such high standards for myself now, like what I'm willing, open, and available for. Before I
Yeah.
realized I was open and available for pretty much everything, I had a very, very ferocious type of people pleaser. I think a lot of women we've learned often from our mothers how to people please.
Yeah.
And I had
Definitely.
yeah. So I had a really ferocious type of people pleaser. And I yeah, she doesn't get many invites to the boardroom meetings these days. It's I dance to the beat of my own drum now.
You don't need her
And
anymore.
it's
What the heck? Fire her.
yeah, exactly, exactly. No, the people pleaser can also be a archetype within us that can also help us if we know how to leverage the energy of the people pleaser. But what we but she often does us no favors, especially when we're willing
Mm.
to. The people pleaser holds within it the codes for the betrayer of the self. So the betrayer of the self is where we become willing to betray ourselves for the needs of someone else. And
Mhm.
as women, I think, particularly as women, we are very conditioned into betraying ourselves. It starts very early in childhood. It's that moment where we're told we're mean if we don't share our toys with a girl. And we know that who we're being told to share our toys with is a girl that breaks the toys.
Yeah.
And we don't want to share the toys. But we're told that be a good girl now. Be a good girl now. And the people pleaser becomes born out of the energy of be a good girl now.
Mm.
And then of course, and the good girl and the people pleaser are willing to cross our own boundaries, and we're willing to betray ourselves for the needs of someone else. Which is then, we get into this ego loop of trying to help others be happy, be fulfilled, and then we don't have any of those we don't have any of those. We don't even know what it looks like for ourselves, and there we are,
No.
hell bent on trying to do it for the world.
Yeah, we do put other people before ourselves because we feel guilty for wanting something for ourselves, and that's why it's quite hard to step up and do something that you want to do.
Yeah. So that's actually how my book ended up being called Get Selfish the Way Is Through, because it had become a process for me. And then when I began coaching, I began teaching other people that process. And without fail, every single one-to-one client that I had, I would describe the process to them and they'd go, but that's selfish. I can't do that. And I would joke with them and I say, listen, if I ever write a self-help book, it will be called Get Selfish. And so of course, there was only ever one name for that book when it came out because it
Yeah.
was Get Selfish, The Way Is Through. And the clients that I had that showed the courage to be able to follow the process, their lives transformed and they had so much more energy, their relationships healed, they started to get a new lease of life, they felt engaged, they felt fulfilled, connected to something larger than themselves. It was incredibly powerful to be witness to these
Mm,
transformations that I was seeing happening in my little office. And it was just a beautiful thing. But it takes tremendous courage because what we're going against is literally years and years of social conditioning to
yeah.
actually feel into our needs and say,
Mm,
what is it that I need today? What is it that and this is a very simple exercise that any of your listeners can do, is just put their hands on their heart, take a couple of deep centering breaths, and just simply just say, what is it that I need today? And to really make yourself a consideration. And if we put that into the context of the law of attraction, which simply states like energy attracts like energy, I get so many women say to me, nobody listens to me, nobody takes my needs seriously. And then I ask them, do you listen to yourself? Do you take your needs seriously? And they go, what?
uh, yeah.
Huh?
No.
Huh? And then they realize, like, I'm not doing any of those things. And I'm like, well, you're expecting the world to do something for you that you're not willing to do for yourself.
Mm,
That's the essence of Get Selfish, is to become willing to be the person, be the one for yourself first.
yeah.
Then everybody else will, you will start to get on the frequency of where other people, you matter to other people. But while you don't matter to yourself, you matter to no one.
Yeah, because people go off of what you do, don't they? So, like you say, if you're not respecting yourself, then people aren't going to respect you either because they don't think that you believe you're worthy of that respect. So, why should they bother?
Absolutely. And I mean, like when I had my multiple organ failure, that's what the first time that I admitted to the people around me that I was struggling. And they were like, well, why didn't you say you were struggling? And I was like, well, why didn't you see I was struggling? Which you can see what the
Mm,
errant behavior was there,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like, because if I had the issue, guess who it should have been that says, excuse me, I need some help here.
yeah.
But no, they that didn't even enter my
Mm,
consciousness to say like, oh, I could actually be asking for help here. And I didn't. And then I didn't and I didn't and I didn't and I didn't until my body was like, Joe, time out.
mm.
Time out now. And that's really what it felt like. And I look back at that part of my life now, and I see many people have suffered with the similar things, not always usually as dramatic as mine,
No.
but I call it a pattern interrupter.
Mm,
So it's like what I have an image of like a big machine with cogs, and then you just chuck a spanner in there, and the machine just grinds to a halt. And I think many people's lives have this moment, the spanner moment.
mm,
And I think, looking around in the world right now, I can see COVID as one of these big spanner moments of like where we're just going along, going along, going along. And now we've had this thing,
yeah,
which is hugely humbling to think that this thing that we cannot even see with the naked eye has brought our society to its knees. But it's
yeah.
also given such an epic opportunity for people to stop, to
Yes,
reassess,
definitely.
to
Definitely
look
the
at their
world of the
lives.
universe has said, "Stop, everybody stop. You're all going the wrong direction. Just give it a
Yeah,
break." Yeah, and I know it's really a
yeah.
really sad thing we're going through, but it's a real blessing as well. There's so much that's come out of it.
I think
Yeah.
for many people, I mean, obviously there's lives that have been lost, and I have every empathy
Yeah.
for that. But I really also think that there's many people who have, with me, with my multiple organ failure, the story that I told myself before was, I have to do it. No one else can do this.
Mhm.
I have to keep going. That story was a falsehood. It wasn't true and it wasn't real. And I think eventually what happened was the universe really was like, enough. of telling this story that is not even true put
Mhm.
me on that giant time out, which then, a month later, when the globe was still spinning on its axis and my businesses hadn't imploded, I was faced and confronted with the truth that, oh, that was a giant lie. Because I had this, I don't know what I had in my mind, but I had this idea that if I stopped, everything would collapse and implode.
Yeah.
And so I had to keep going. And I think many people in 9 to 5 jobs or the workplace, pre-COVID was probably telling a very similar story.
Mm.
Like, I have to keep going. Like, I have to do this job. This is how I get money and things. And, along comes this giant pattern interrupter, interrupting our daily patterns. And we're forced to look at the truth of these stories and realize, there's people who have lost jobs in this crisis, but they're still here, and so we're looking at the I feel like it's a bit of a lie that we've been telling ourselves.
Definitely. Yeah, and it's like you say, people can see now that actually maybe I don't need to do that anymore. Maybe I could do something that I enjoy doing. Maybe I could quit that 9 to 5 and
Mm.
actually start my own thing, like spiritual life and business coaching, things like that. That actually I'm more passionate about that. And when you start on that new journey, on that new path, that's when you start to fly because that's where the flow is. Like you say, it's effortless.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think I knew when it was time to come out of my shops. After my multiple organ failure, obviously I knew things needed to change, but I was still very, very passionate about the industry that I was in at the time. But I remember, having done so much law of attraction work and law of attraction training and doing a lot of mindset work and inner healing work, and I was doing a lot of body work on myself as well. So I
Mhm.
was attending things like my acupuncturist and herbalists and things, and helping to restore the health and vitality of my body. And I remember this woman, and she was a runner. So I always used to see her around our town, like running, like every time I was driving in my car, there she was running, like morning and night running. She was really, really slim. And she was in my shop and she tried on a pair of jeans, and they she came out of the fitting room, and these jeans were like a UK size 8, so really quite a small size.
Yeah.
And she came out of the fitting room and she pinched two bits of skin together, and she said, "Do you think these jeans suit me, or do you think I look really fat in these?" And I remember just looking at this woman
Oh
and
my
my
goodness.
heart breaking
Oh, bless her.
in that moment, like, really, like, my heart really splitting in two
Mm,
and really breaking for her, and remembering feeling I didn't want to sell her the jeans. What I wanted to do was make her a cup of tea, take her to one of the seats, sit her down, and really talk about what was really going on with this woman.
mm, yeah,
Because when you have a washboard stomach, and I knew how much exercise this woman did, I knew how much running she did. I mean, I swear I was never like, every time I was in the car, there she was.
yeah.
She had really, really was, fit and looked great. But obviously, when she looked in that mirror, she saw a very, very distorted reality.
Mm,
And I remember just thinking, I really don't want to sell you these jeans. What I really would love to do is to sit you down and let's talk about what's really going on.
yeah,
Let's see if we can't have a conversation that can lead to healing. And that was the moment I came home and I said to my husband, I think I'm done in the shops. And I think my husband was kind of like, what? And I was like, no, I really think I've got to try and find a way to get out of this, because I feel like that was a moment I feel like I sensed that I had evolved beyond it,
mm,
that the fashion industry was a great industry for me to start with, because I it was like a very, very early, clothes can make you feel amazing.
yeah,
And the right clothes that fit really beautifully and look really good can make you feel $1,000,000, but it's only a tiny, tiny piece of the equation, because you can have the most beautiful clothes on, just like that woman had the most beautiful tailored Italian jeans on, and she still saw a fat woman in the mirror, because inside there was work to do.
Mm.
And I realized that I had evolved beyond just making the surface feel good, and it was about moving into the internal world and making the internal world feel amazing.
Yeah.
And
That's pretty
and that's when
powerful.
I knew I had just evolved beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a really special and really beautiful moment, and I knew that that woman was an agent of the divine for me in that moment to show me that I had evolved beyond what I was
Mm.
doing, and it was time for the next adventure. And so I sold my shops. I sold my 3 stores, and I, went into my coaching and my psychic work to a bigger degree, and
Okay.
I'm still doing, like, I did corporate coaching for a while, so I had, like, clients, like Specsavers and people like that. I did training for them and stuff, so and it was kind of weird when I was doing that because I obviously had really, really awakened the spiritual side to me. And so I was kind of like constantly trying to keep the two worlds separate. So I had this
Mm.
like very straight laced corporate coaching, let's get your staff motivated, let's get your staff trained on one side. And then I was like, please, Lord, don't let them know that I speak to dead people at the weekends. And I was doing like mediumship demonstrations at the weekend. And I was
Speak to
like,
dead
please, Lord,
people
don't
for the
let them know.
weekend.
And it was kind of funny and like this, but then as I started progressing and I kept my spiritual events company, that was the only company that I kept, and I kept and as I kept evolving that business and I kept that business and, I was really, really loving the work,
Mm.
loving the coaching. I was doing a lot of readings. At one point, I was also doing corporate psychic work, which involved me looking like a secretary, sitting at meetings, basically feeling the vibes of companies that would be classified as Fortune 500 companies. And
Wow.
so it was pretty insane.
That's it.
I
Yeah.
think I'm like one of the only people that I know that actually has ever done that, where I had to sign all these, like, I can't tell you the companies I work for because I had to sign just like
Yeah.
non-disclosure forms and things. But it was pretty insane. And and I would go and fly down to like London and places like that and do that work. So but then my love of coaching really, really took over, and I just loved the transformation. I just loved taking somebody from where they were at and
Yeah.
walking with them, holding the container for them as they showed tremendous courage and bravery to look at all of the things that was really crappy in their lives and
Yeah.
make a concerted effort to change those and give them the tools to change those things. And then to see coming out the other end of that process these very, very different beings that felt more connected, better relationships, more money, that like everything. There wasn't an area in people's lives that didn't improve. It was like
Mhm.
everything, because when you improve the core, everything changes to the tune of what's going on inside.
Yeah.
And so it's just a really beautiful process. And then in 2015, I after I had closed all my businesses and everything like that, and I had only had the spiritual events company, I wasn't earning huge money. And even though I had these corporate gigs, they were few and far between. They weren't, what I was doing all the time. So I was really sick and tired of being sick and tired and being broke all the time. So in 2015, I decided to do something quite insane, which was to move my entire business online
Mm.
and to stop the most profitable part of my work, which was the readings and the psychic stuff. So I decided to use my spiritual gifts in a very different way and to use it incorporated with my coaching. But what I loved the most was the coaching. So 2015, I moved online, and it was a complete wing and a prayer. And we moved online. I was at that time, my family and I, we were on welfare, to boost our mini income was,
Yeah.
and my husband had been was also my carer quite often because I had good days and bad days with chronic fatigue and stuff, which was the aftermath of having all of the multiple organ failure. I had a lot of apparently incurable things, which I
Mm.
don't suffer from at all now. So
Excellent.
And then in 2017, I I retired my husband from his job, and in
Woohoo!
2017 we brought my daughter home.
Yay!
So it was really amazing. And then our business has just continued to build. We now have a team of 5, including myself, in the business. And at the end of last year, my business went completely. So at the end of 2020, my business went completely viral. With $1 million experiment, people were sharing it like crazy. It was
Mm.
just absolutely insane. Um, we closed the cart on the $1 million experiment at 1,900 people in, and then woke up on the 1st of January 2021, and people were like, please let us in.
Let me in.
So we decided to open the cart for, yeah, they were like, please. And so we opened the cart for the last 3 days of the week, the last week of 2020, which actually had the first 3 days of 2021
Yeah.
in it. We decided just to open the cart for those 3 days. And in those 3 days, we went completely viral, and 2,300 people joined us in 3 days.
Wow, that's
It was
crazy.
completely,
Yeah.
it was crazy. It was completely insane. Um, and then from that point onwards, our business has just gone from strength to strength. And in fact, one of our girls that works for us, one of the ladies that works for us, she was only doing part-time hours, but we've now convinced her to come on board with us full time. So she's now going to be our new online business manager. So we're so excited. She
I'm
starts
so
on the
excited
1st of
for you. Oh my
March, but the
goodness.
company's just
I can't wait to see what else happens this year.
exactly, this year is going to be insane. I mean, the energy in the business is really, really insane. And the teachings that are coming through right now are so next level. It's, my business is not really like a sort of traditional online marketer business, in the fact that the invite isn't just as much as coming into my programs and learning, like the things are in the programs. It's about coming into my energy and learning
Mm.
to calibrate to the energy, learning to calibrate to a different way of being, as opposed to becoming like, I always love
Mm.
Deepak Chopra's "I'm not a human doing." I am a
I'm
human
a human
being.
being.
and
Yeah,
and I
I
always
love that
love that.
too.
Yeah,
Excellent.
and so many of us are like these human doings, right? We're just like
Yeah.
doing, 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 and we're so busy, and we forget that
Mm.
there's so much power in the beingness.
God is going to be absolutely phenomenal this year for you. I'm so I'm just blown away. I'm really, really I feel really excited for you right now. I'm just like, oh my God, it's crazy. Just I love the story and I love everything that you do because I'm huge into law of attraction and energetic vibration and all those kind of things. So this is perfect for me. And I just love hearing your story. It's just I'm sorry that you had organ failure. That's not a good thing, but it actually was in a kind of way because it woke you up, didn't it? So it's fantastic.
Absolutely. It was, I think, many people's spiritual awakenings. I think we have this beautiful image of a Hollywood actress fluttering her eyelids open in full makeup, the light streaming through, and this is somehow going to be our
Oh,
spiritual
hello.
awakening. But most of us feel like we've been grabbed by the scalp and dragged through a bush backwards, and we're like, we don't know which way is up, we don't know which way is down. What the hell has happened to my life?
Yeah.
It is usually rough.
I had a breakdown pretty much when I just before mine. So yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, it's crazy. But it's like the universe is like,
Yeah.
all right, stop messing about, listen up, wise up, and just do it. And you're like, okay, I'm sorry. I will. I'll behave now, I promise.
Exactly. I think most people's spiritual awakenings is extreme discomfort. And what Skylar talk about that in spiritual awakening, what Skylar says about that, they call it cosmic alarm clocks.
Okay.
And so the alarm clock will ring in your life many times, and we'll often just be like snooze, snooze, snooze.
Hmm.
But eventually what will happen is that that cosmic alarm clock will ring so loudly, and it will bring something into your life that you cannot, absolutely, for love nor money can you ignore that. And for me, I could
Mm.
not ignore. I had plenty of little nice "Good morning, Mrs. Hunter. Would you like to wake up?" And I was like, "Just
Yeah.
place me on snooze, please." And I had lots of that. But eventually the universe backed me into such a corner. It was like wake up or
Mm.
die. And I was like, okay, I think
Yeah.
I'll take awakening, thanks. And
Yeah.
in
Tough
so I
choice.
am actually, it sounds terrible to say that I'm grateful for multiple organ failure, but I'm grateful that I went through that. Would I want to go through it again? No. But
No,
I'm very
no.
grateful that the opportunity that it brought into my life, and I'm very grateful that I was willing to take the opportunity,
Mm.
because a
Yeah.
thing like that could have driven me even further into my Poor Little Me story.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
It was, because when I was left with I had 5 abdominal surgeries after my multiple
Mm.
organ failure to fix, like, all different things in my insides,
Mm.
basically. And, and it would have been very, very easy to have slipped into like a complete, well, now I have chronic fatigue and I have chronic pain, and I got this autoimmune thing. They couldn't even give me a name for it, but it was literally like I was allergic to the world for about 8
Mm.
months. If I had water that didn't even come out of my own tap, my entire mouth would just like break out in blisters. It would feel
Wow.
like I was drinking razor blades, even just taking a drink, because I would have like blisters all inside my throat and things. It was horrible. And like there was no name for that. And when you're going to doctors and you're hoping that they'll give you the answer and they'll maybe give you something
Mm.
for it, and they're like, we don't even know what this is. Like, and they just send you for like more and more tests. I felt like a pincushion. And it would have been very easy during that time in my life to have spiraled even further into that story of Poor
Yeah,
Little Me, like Poor Little
definitely.
Me. And there was times where I felt very low indeed. Like I was really like, is this it for me? But then there was a stronger voice inside me and was like, no, not on my watch. We don't let this be it for
Mm.
us. And that was like the kind of inner rebel, I think, in a way, that was like, no, this is not allowed to be the status quo. We will change this.
Yeah.
And change it we did. And I'm so grateful. But I know that my journey through that darkness, through that difficulty, was given to me so that I could use it as a tool to illuminate the path for other
Mm.
people who find themselves in similar situations.
Perfect.
So I often say that the training for spirit is brutal.
Yeah, it's not
Like I always say my boss is spirit, but their training day is
it's a hard
brutal.
master, but yeah, totally worth it, yeah, definitely. Well, Jo, thank you so much.
Absolutely, completely worth it. But like the training day, boot camp for
Yeah.
spirit is brutal. But once you come out the other end, the tools that you have been given,
Mm.
what you learn about yourself, what you learn about the
Mm.
world, what you learn about your relationships and the people around
Mm.
you and things. Oh, just would not even change it for all the tea in China, because it is really, really so
Yeah,
powerful. And you know, I I never ever thought I would be a person that would say, "I absolutely adore my life," and I absolutely adore my life.
yay!
But it wasn't always like that, and that's the
Yeah,
pleasure that I get, is I help other people move into that energy of, I absolutely adore my
yeah,
life. And even if you're listening to this and you think, wow, what would it be like to adore my life? Like, I have no idea what that would even look like, because that's where I
yeah.
was when I first started this journey. I had no idea what that would look like. Um, it's a powerful journey.
Mm.
It's a powerful, powerful journey. And I'm always like, I wake up excited in life. People always ask me, like, Joanna, you are like the Duracell bunny. You are full of energy all the
Mhm.
time. And I think one of the secrets to that is I'm tuned in and tapped into my own energy first. And I think many people are not tuned in and tapped into their own energy. So they're not tapped into their source of energy,
Mm.
which is themselves. And instead, what they're doing is they're spending so much time doing things that spark no light in their being whatsoever. And it never sparks a single shred of light. And then they're wondering why they're tired all the time. And I'm like, they sleep 8 hours and they eat right food and they do all the things that you're meant to
Yeah,
do. But actually, the truth is that they spend so little time doing the stuff that sparks joy in their life.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Joanna, for joining us today. It's been absolutely amazing. If my listeners want to get in touch with you, what's the best place to find you?
So you can find me at joannahunter.com on my own website, or I am often on Facebook. That's my favorite platform. So you'll find me at Joanna Hunter, COM for com. all one word, on Facebook, and you can get me there. And I'm Joanna Hunter COM on all social media platforms.
Perfect. We'll put some links as well in the notes. So thank you very, very much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope you have a great
Lovely.
day.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's been absolutely wonderful.
Thank you for listening to the Happy, Inspired, Motivated podcast. I'll be back next week bringing more meditation, mindset, and motivation for your happy and successful life. To find out more about our community, go to tarachatzakis.com/happy, inspired, motivated.